share a copy of the recording. I hope that's okay with everyone. Okay. Great. So I'll just share our agenda slide. We're going to be spending some time hearing from people who are interested in using data on social outcomes, particularly thinking about what success could look like. And then in our second major session, we'll have some people who have previous experience on collaborative data projects and on bringing people together to share information in standardized ways. We'll be covering sort of how they have articulated and understood success. We're particularly keen not to reinvent wheels here, so we're looking out for any wheels that we can borrow from elsewhere. Next up though, I wanted to do a few introductions because there's not too many of us on the call. So I thought I would have a quick, let's quickly hear from each other. It'd be great if you could just share your name and the organisation that you work with. And I'll just run down our participant list here. So first up is Anita.
Hi, I'm Anita from the UBS Optimus Foundation.
Thanks, Anita. And Abba? I think you might be muted, Abba. Okay, let's move down the list. Next up is Ruben.
Hi, my name is Ruben Koekoek and I'm from Social Finance NL from Amsterdam.
Next up is Chloe.
Hi, I'm Chloe Tai with Biggest to Invest.
Lavinia.
Hi everyone, I'm Lavinia Pastore from the University of Rome Tor Vergata.
Inga.
Hi, I'm Inga Afanasieva. I'm with the World Bank based in Washington, DC.
Thanks. Mara, you're next on my screen.
Hi, I'm Mari Rordi. I'm the director of the GoLab.
James.
Hi, I'm James Ronicle. I'm an associate director at Ecorus.
Next up's Corey.
Hi, everyone. I'm Corey Zarek. I'm at Georgetown University, which is based in Washington, D.C., although I live in San Francisco. And I'm coming to you today from Colorado, all over the place.
Thanks for joining us, Corey. I appreciate it. It's an early start for you. Inez.
Hello, I'm Inez and I work for Maize Decoding Impact based in Lisbon.
And next up, Michael.
Hi, I'm Michael Gibson from the GoLab.
Chloe. Are you able to unmute, Chloe?
Is that me? We already did me.
Yeah, sorry.
Chloe
sorry.
from Biggest to Invest.
Thanks, Chloe. Next up, Pritam.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pritam Hiraman. I work for National Air Traffic Services in the UK and also a part-time PhD researcher at the University of Reading, currently exploring the use of innovation labs to enhance organizational creativity.
Thank you. Jonathan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jonathan Hertel. I'm from Mission Measurement and the Impact Genome Project here in Chicago, Illinois.
Thanks for joining us, Jonathan. Ian, you're next on the list.
Hi, I'm Ian Marr from the Growth Partnership in sunny Scotland.
Thanks. Juliana.
Hi, I'm Juliana and I also work as an intern for the GoLab.
Silvana.
Hi, I'm Silvana Fumega. I work with ILDA, the Latin America Data Initiative, and right now I'm based in Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Thanks, Silvana. Milena, you're next.
Hi, I'm Milena Castelnou with the Education Outcomes Fund.
Thanks for joining us. How about you, Krisha?
Hi everyone, I'm Krisha. I'm with the British Asian Trust.
Tom.
Hi everyone, I'm Tom Davis. I'm from Social Finance UK.
Thanks. Oscar next.
Thanks. I'm Oscar Hernandez. I'm a Senior Program Manager with the Open Contracting Partnership, and I'm based out of Bogota.
Thanks. Have Federico.
Hello everyone, my name is Federico. I'm the Social Impact Bonds Manager at the Chilean Ministry of Science and Innovation.
Thanks. Estela.
Hi everyone, I'm Stella. I work at the OECD in the Public Sector Integrity Division, and I'm based in Paris.
Thanks. Nigel?
Sorry, I have to get to the unmute button. Hi, I'm Nigel. I'm the Executive Director here at the Go Lab. And I'll just cheekily say welcome everybody. So far, it's an incredible group. So look forward to this discussion.
Thanks. Jack?
Hi everyone, I'm Jack Lord from Open Data Services Cooperative.
Thank you. Daniela?
Hi, I'm Daniela. I'm from Freshfields, broadcaster in Northern.
Thanks. Richard?
Hi, I'm Richard Howroyd. I'm the Head of Strategic Procurement and Commissioning for Bath and North East Somerset Council in very sunny Somerset at the moment.
Thanks. Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah Osborne. I'm with the Brookings Institution.
George?
Hi, this is Georg Neumann. I'm with the Open Contracting Partnership based out of Washington, DC.
Oh, hi. Sorry for mispronouncing your name. Caroline?
Oh, hi, everyone. My name is Caroline. I'm Policy Advisor at the Centre for Social Impact Bonds at DCMS.
Oh, great. Oh, well, I understand you're new in Pace, Caroline. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Tim?
Hi, I'm Tim Davies, Director of the Global Data Barometer, and generally around open data standards, collaboration projects, working with Go Lab on INDIGO.
Thanks. Lorraine?
Hello everybody, I'm Lorraine Craig from the National Lottery Community Fund, based in Newcastle upon Tyne.
Lucy?
Hi everyone, I'm Lucy Heddy, CEO of Education Sub-Saharan Africa.
Thanks. Ken?
Hi everyone, I'm Ken Moriyama, and I'm the Managing Director of K3. We're a GovTech based in Japan.
Mehdi?
Hi there, I'm Mehdi, an economist at Go Lab.
Yasna?
Hi everyone, I'm a policy advisor at the Centre for Social Impact Bonds at the UK Department for Digital Media, Culture and Sport. Very nice to meet you all.
Thank you. Radana?
Hi everybody, Radana Kova. I lead the impact investing team in still the Department for International Development in the UK.
Ruth?
Hi, I'm Ruth. I'm a research fellow at the Go Lab in Oxford.
Great. Okay. Hopefully I've covered anything. Everyone, is there anyone on the line who I've missed?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Elle. It's Claudia.
Hi.
I'm a bit late. Sorry, that's why. Hi, I'm Claudia. I'm the very tired co-founder and CEO of the Impact Alliance because we literally just yesterday launched our platform. And I had no internet all morning. So I'm also very jealous of Tim's pen because I'm very hot. Great to be with all of you. Quite a few partners of ours on the call, so very excited to see our friends from Maze and Ken and our friends from DFID. So looking forward to this today.
Great, thank you. I think I've missed Edison.
Hi, you missed me as well. My name is Shabs. Hi, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm based in Spain. And I've got my video off because my kids are interested in watching this too. So
we understand. Thanks. I understand that Kaye, Andrea, and Claire are also on the line. Kaye.
Yeah.
Hi. Yes, sorry, I haven't got my video on either. And I've just literally joined, so I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing. Did you want me to introduce myself?
Your name and where you work, please, Kaye.
All right, okay. Kaye Turner, I'm a funding manager at the National Lottery Community Fund.
Thanks so much. And my colleagues Claire, Andrea are also on the line. Thanks so much, everyone. It's really fantastic to have such a diverse group of people on the line. The director of the Go Lab, Mara, has offered to conduct a bit of a visioning exercise for us to help us think about what brings us together and what exciting journey we might be on to.
Okay.
So Mara, could I hand over to you to help us think about what we might like to achieve?
Yes, thank you, Elle. Thank you, everyone. I want us to spend a few minutes reflecting what INDIGO should achieve, what we would like it to achieve in the next, say, 3 to 5 years. So I'm doing this in the quickest way I know to bring us straight to the point and focus our mind for the conversation we have for the next hour. So follow my instructions. My instructions are, I would like you all now to close your eyes. We spend our days in front of screen, just close your eyes and think about what you're doing as an organization in your organizations in terms of creating positive change. And when you are creating this positive change, think about projects that are coming up, or projects that you just closed, or projects that you are managing. And we all have the experience that when we design, manage, or even assess projects, we usually want to compare it. We want to learn from each other. We want to compare notes. We want to benchmark with other projects. We don't start from a blank sheet of paper. Now, we are projecting ourselves in a future where in 3 to 5 years, INDIGO is up and running, and it has been collecting information about projects that aim to produce impact. And we are publishing information of these projects that is available at your fingertips. So you can draw down maybe example, maybe metrics, maybe these resources to improve what you're doing in your organization. So I want you to take 2 minutes, and those 2 minutes will be in silence, to think about which are the information and the data you are going to use the most. Like I'm not talking about a dystopian future when we have a perfect artificial intelligence and robot. This is 3 to 5 years from now. This information is available, can be collected. It should be accessible. What information are you looking for and what you want to do with it? So I give you 2 minutes from now, and then I will ask you to share in the chat your priorities so that the INDIGO team then will deliver it. Maybe. We'll strive to deliver. So 2 minutes from now, what data are you looking forward to be able to access, and in what format? Great. I can see, like, open gently your eyes, as in a yoga class. I can see people are starting to contribute suggestions. We can share all these suggestions as a follow-up to this call if you want to have food for thought. And I hope this suggestion will help us focusing the discussion and also focus, as I said, focusing your mind on what you hope to achieve. So please use this insight to prompt the discussion today, and keep adding in the chat things that you've seen you wish to be able to download, and we'll get going working on this.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mara. Yeah, it's great to have all of those comments going into the chat, and we'll keep that as our grand shared ambition. I knew that Mara was a secret weapon for making a learning group on data have some fun, so thank you for that. Okay, I'd now, first of all, please do keep those comments coming into the chat function, and we'll be sure to keep a record. I'd like to turn now to my colleague Rory, who's begun to put some structure around some of the ways that we've begun to think about how we might come together as a community on some of these issues. Over to you, Rory.
Thank you. I think we have some slides that I may need during the course of this. But anyway, hello everyone. My name is Rory, and my accent is a little strange because I grew up in Belfast in north of Ireland, or Northern Ireland, before moving to the US, where I've lived for over 15 years. I'm a lawyer based in New York. I work as a researcher for the Go Lab, mostly on procurement. But I also manage some IT contracts as a contractor to various US government agencies. Anyway, many people have become recently familiar with data about death due to COVID-19. In our various cities and countries around the world, including here in New York City, many millions of people are looking at curves and at efforts to flatten the curve. Consider for a moment the challenges in collecting those data and then making comparisons across very different contexts, different cities, different countries. But as challenging as all that may be, the task before this group is more complex, because those curves are about death, and death caused by one thing, COVID-19. Forgive me for stating the obvious, but death is quite binary. One is either dead or not dead, generally. Our work is about life, and life is not binary. The various projects that we're all working on are not simply about avoiding death. We are working to improve lives, whether it's lives with education, lives with a job, or lives with shelter, lives without abuse. We're working for better social outcomes. And so we're here bold enough to try and describe this various work about life to each other and to others. Why? Well, you know, some reasons are appearing in the chat, but for example, a local government policymaker designing a program to reduce youth homelessness may want to learn from other projects, some of the projects here. What are homelessness outcomes? Who, how, or when do you define them, perhaps during procurement? What other partners have been involved? Who are the service users? How many of service users were there? How did the project go? These are the types of things a policymaker may want to know. Anyway, our concise and deceptively simple proposition here is that better data will lead to better social outcomes. I think there's a slide that expands upon this proposition. We have a draft theory of change or logic model, and it's shared in advance. It's on our webpage, because I don't want to go into too much detail here, but there's a few things I want to highlight. And by the way, logic model sounds quite clever, but I'll never forget the first time I looked at a logic model and realized this is just a table. And it's a table with inputs and activities and outputs and outcomes and ultimately impact. I think it's the next slide. But and again, this is on the web page that I shared with you in advance. But I don't want to go into too much detail. Let me just highlight a few things. Elle is the leader in this work, and Elle likes food metaphors. So I've got 3 layers of a cake, and I'm introducing INDIGO as 3 layers of a cake. Our first layer is about community. It's about getting better data for better social outcomes. And this is really about developing a shared community, shared culture around norms, what data should be, culture and norms about what data we should be sharing. It's more about culture across public, private, and third sectors, different policy domains, different contexts. This peer learning session is part of that layer. Our upcoming hackathon, our Hack and Learn, co-hosted with Georgetown University. Corey's on here today. As part of that layer, we are building community here, and we invite you to participate in this community. Anyway, the second layer is about a system. We've engaged a contractor, Open Data Services, to develop an open source database management system, open source data visualizations to help us describe and understand our various projects. The software code, the data model, our data definitions, and various templates to describe our process will be all open source. If you fund or invest or deliver on outcomes-based projects, these resources are available for you to build into your projects. The third layer of our cake is about data sets. We already have a project data set about impact bonds. We're improving upon that data set and beginning work on other data sets, such as a prototype for social investment. We're doing that with our learning partner, Big Issue Invest. Chloe is on here today. We anticipate supporting multiple open data sets. If you have data on innovative cross-sector partnerships to solve complex social problems, let's talk about understanding, hosting, and sharing your data. Please let me call your attention to another table sent in advance about use cases. I think that's the next, yeah, the next slide. Describing our various endeavors around life in all these different contexts might be easily overwhelming, but it is less overwhelming if we focus squarely on use. We are not here simply to produce more data. We are not here simply to produce more data. We are here to support the use of data in specific use cases, and we'd like your help to define those use cases. Anyway, I'm sort of running out of time, so let me jump to emphasize that this data work is hard work, and it takes time and effort. But the work itself, this data work, is not as important as the actual direct work of improving lives. Our work on data is only important to the extent that it helps our colleagues in practical ways. This is why we must focus on use. And clarifying our use cases is the primary purpose of this session. I'm out of time, but the essential point is we are here together to describe our projects on life. Let's help each other, and let's use better data for better social outcomes. You are the experts. Let's listen and learn together.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Rory. And I think that emphasis on use and making sure that what we're focusing on is usable provides a really helpful framework for thinking about our work. And it's also the framework that we've encouraged our first set of discussants to use. We've encouraged our first set of contributors to describe who they are, the kind of role that they play in the world of outcomes-based commissioning and contracting, what a data initiative or data community would enable them to do. And we've encouraged people, if it's helpful, to take that in the form of a user story. So as a particular user, I want to describe the particular function, and so that to describe the particular output or objective that we're aiming to achieve. My colleague Juliana has kindly offered to write up these comments as user stories as we move through our contributors. So thanks, Juliana, for offering to do that. And I'll now pass over to our first discussant, which is Ruben from Social Finance NL.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. I'm really excited to be part of this initiative and have a dialogue with such a diverse and global group of people. My name is Ruben Kukuk. I'm Managing Director of Social Finance NL. And we are a social enterprise, part of the Social Finance Global Network, and we are dedicated to measure, finance, and scale social impact. And before social finance, I worked 9 years for ABN AMRO Bank. And we initiated the first social impact bond here in the Netherlands, and we copied that scale to model. So I'm involved in around 10 of those contracts with different commissioners. And actually, I'm so happy that you started the initiative of INDIGO, because I think we have, in the world of impact bonds, we have quite a battle to fight. I think the situation is not very good at the moment when we look at transparency and sharing data. And I think that if we really want to make the model more rigorous, and we want to scale up the initiatives of outcome-based contracts, we really have to share more data and be more transparent. And that's also like the problem I like to put here on the table. Because what I see in the impact bond world in the Netherlands, but also abroad, is that most of the contracts and most of the data are not enclosed, and that's a problem, because the promise of CIPS is that we get better results. But if we don't show those results to the public, that promise, we can't deliver upon that promise. And what I see in the different deals I'm involved in is that during the negotiation phase, we see that investors, but also service providers, have problem to share the relevant data. So then all eyes are on the commissioner. I think the commissioner should have a role as defender of taxpayer money to demand more transparency. However, in a complex negotiation, there's a bigger priority on the maximum rate of return, or the size of the target population, and not that much on transparency. So in those negotiations, transparency and sharing data is always the one who is losing. And that's a huge problem, because first, we cannot research whether social impact bonds are effective compared with other financing mechanisms. We cannot, it's hard for intermediaries, but also other outcome payers to stand on the shoulders of previous deals and to copy the initiative easier. And I think it's also a problem for investors, because if we want to scale up the initiatives, you want to go to the institutional investors like pension funds and the major banks, then all they want to have is a track record. And also investors, if they can show a track record of multiple deals with multiple outcomes, and they can really investigate those outcomes, then I think we cannot attract major investors like pension funds into our market. So yeah, I think it's a major problem, and I really hope that INDIGO can be part of the solution, and I also believe that that INDIGO can. And like in the ideal world, I hope there will be like a golden standard for transparency and sharing data for result-based contracts like impact bond, like you also have a golden standard on accounting for firms. And yeah, it would be great if INDIGO can facilitate discussion, but also publish papers, and maybe even judge the different impact bonds on their openness and their transparency. So yeah, that's a short introduction, like what my buy-in would be on this this topic, and I'm really eager to hear from all of you how you can think we can better share data in our sector.
Fantastic, thanks, Ruben. Love the sound of the golden standard. It sets quite a high bar, I think. Next up, we have Inga, and you have a very ambitious program of work in this space. Could you talk us about what success would look like for you, Inga?
Hi, everyone. My name is Inga Afanasieva. I am a senior infrastructure specialist at the World Bank, and I'm also based in a team that has been doing results-based purchase for the last 17 years. For about a couple of years now, we've moved into outcome-based contracting, impact bonds, and we have a pipeline of 4 projects now at the World Bank that will be impact bonds that my team is spearheading. As a trust fund, we have several donors that provide us with grant funding, DFID being the most active on this front. And the latest news is that we've created an outcomes fund at the World Bank. That was the result of continuous discussions in this group, particularly in the impact bond working group. So that has been very helpful, has provided a lot of weight into what we're doing. In terms of data, I'm really glad to see this group forming. If you guys can crack the code on this, then you'll be the stars. What I can say on data sharing at the World Bank, we have a rigorous disclosure policy on data. It's online. There's a lot of information that we post on our projects consistently across projects, from project appraisal documents, contracts. All our contracts and financing agreements with governments are public. The procurement plan of each single project is public, which means that every funding that we make to government has a procurement plan, and then the activities, every single line will have a dollar amount to it, so people would know how much is spent on what, how much is projected on what, and then based on competitive contracting, you would have a final cost. So that information is public and accessible. The advantage of the projects that we do at the World Bank for the Outcome Fund and my team in general is that our results-based financing projects, including impact bonds, are for the most part components in larger World Bank intervention. So what that means is that we benefit from a big investment upstream, which makes the downstream contracts, including impact bonds, possible. So that also helps us with the issue of attribution, because in this larger investment program, you'll track the results for every single activity, and you have indicators that measure it. And then at the end of the day, you could more or less confidently say to what extent the results of the impact bond have been influenced by other factors and upstream investments, and which ones in particular. So from the policy perspective, it's useful information to know what upstream work makes it more makes an impact bond more effective. And then what I would like to see, and I've put it a little bit into the chat, what I am curious about and what would help us a lot is to have data on outcomes by sectors, subsectors, and themes, and unit costs. It would help us a lot in designing and preparing this type of projects and showing comparisons across. Another point of interest, again, looking not only at the impact bond per se, but what happened before in order to make the impact bond effective and successful. So all this upstream work and parallel activities that have happened, and the dialogue with the government and other stakeholders. And then thirdly, what I'd like to see is, and what we put a lot of emphasis in our unit, is this delta between the project that has been designed and the closure of the project. What worked, what didn't work, what changes had to be made to adjust and to course correct, which is beautifully done in impact bonds and possible, and what are the lessons learned from that. So that's it on my side, my intervention. Again, my team, we want to go beyond what World Bank protocols, simple protocols allow for data sharing, and to the extent possible, to what Ruben was saying earlier, see what details and how much of the downstream contracts between the government and the investor, the government and the service provider can be made public. What the bank is making public is all of its contracts with the government, and that's the given. All right, thank you.
Thanks so much, Inga. Next we have Anita from UBS Optimus Foundation.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm Anita. I work in the social finance team of UBS Optimus Foundation. Prior to joining the foundation, actually I have background in microfinance investment fund management and microfinance programming. And so, yeah, thank you for framing your pragmatism in framing the discussion around use cases. I think it's really helpful. So I'm very happy to use the framework of as I want so that you proposed. The UBS Optimus Foundation, in terms of roles in outcomes partnerships, we play the role of the investor, and we are also in the process of setting up an investment fund that would invest in a portfolio of impact bonds. So as an investor and as a sponsor of an investment fund, we would like to see more granular global data on financial performance of impact bonds, with the idea that we could use that to demonstrate the track record of impact bonds and hopefully on the long term draw more capital, more commercial focused capital into investing impact bonds. That's one. Another role that we have as the UBS Optimus Foundation, we are also involved in, basically we commission structuring and design work for impact bonds. And we are also, in addition to that, we are also philanthropy grant makers. So actually a lot of the work we do is on outcomes contracts, but even more of our funding every year goes to straight grants. So as a commissioner of design work on impact bonds and also as a philanthropy grant maker, we would like to see, as many of you have posted on the chat, just metrics, so outputs, outcomes, and how they have been measured, that could basically constitute kind of a repository that can be used as a reference. And we would then use that not only for our impact bonds, but also more widely in our straight grant making to hopefully nudge many of the program implementers we are working around the globe to be more results focused, and then hopefully, you know, have them grow into being able to take part in an outcomes contract, which is, I think, our goal to build the sector globally. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. In terms of the type of data, I think because we have this very unique position that we need to balance our communications with more of the development sector as well as with the financial sector, given our link to UBS, the bank. It would be really helpful for us to have data that can be understood by both sectors, so the development sector and financial sector. And I think with that comes the fact that less is more. So probably, you know, focus on a number of indicators, a number of things that we can manage. Yeah.
Great.
Thanks everyone.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks, Anita. And I think that the ability to read across sectors is going to be a really important piece for us to bear in mind. Next up is Chloe. Could you talk us through your use case?
Hi, sure. Yeah, so I'm Chloe. I work at Big Issue Invest. We are a social investment arm of the Big Issue magazine based in London. I'm in our impact team. So I do a lot of work around one of our outcomes contract, which is one of the financial products that we provide that invest in social outcomes contracts and social impact bonds. And so I think in terms of what this could do for us, Ruben outlined quite a few things really well earlier, so I'll be quite quick. But I think transparency is, again, really important to us. So being able to kind of benchmark ourselves in the market, and also benchmark the support that we provide to our investees in outcomes contracting would be really valuable to us. And it would also kind of help us provide the right type of support in future contracts to our investees, and also in fundraising, if we can benchmark ourselves and the type of support that we're providing, it would really help us with raising more funds in the future for similar products, and also just shared learnings, because we have a lot of kind of we get very heavily involved in the contracting process. So being able to take those learnings from similar types of contract in similar sectors, from other different contracts and social investors, things that they're providing, I think would really, really help us in that process and help overall help the impact of the end service that's being provided. And then also just my last point was that I think this community would really help us to make outcomes contracts more understandable in the market. So a lot of time is spent describing social outcomes contracts and to different commissioners and different service providers, and even in our kind of team, it's so many terms and concepts get debated about. So I think having like a shared language and a shared community where that everyone's bought into would really help us with making the concept more understandable, and help us kind of get onto the really important stuff, which is support providing the finance to help deliver the service. And then just in that final question, which is the key kind of values that the community could have, I just had a few points around transparency, speaking the same language, usability, which you've mentioned already, and just having the voice of everyone at all the different levels. So social investors, commissioners, providers, kind of everyone being involved at an early stage, which it's kind of obvious here that you have that. So you've got such a varied different people from organisations. So yeah, they're my key points.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Chloe. An important point that we need to get our language lined up. Thank you. Next up is Krisha from the British Asian Trust. Thanks, Krisha.
Thanks, Elle. Hi, everyone. I'm Krisha Mathur. I'm a social finance manager at the British Asian Trust. We are intermediaries in the market. We help identify, while playing in this market, we help our partners identify the need for innovative finance products, but then we also help them design and bring together all the partners for these instruments. And then we also help manage these transactions and work with our partners through the length and through the life of the instrument. So that's the role we play. And as you can imagine, given that we do this broad spectrum of things, data has a very, very important role in all of this. And when we think about data, I think we look at data at three levels. One is at the transaction level, which is at the heart of what you want to do, the data that the service providers collect, the evidence that is generated, and that's really the first level. A level above, and how we think about data is at the sectoral level, and what's the evidence that it's generating, and that's really, really critical as we think about using more and more such instruments going forward. And I think the third level, and what a lot of folks have been talking about, is the outcome level data, which really helps, which is really what we all want to be able to compare. How do the outcomes, how does the cost per outcome compare? What is the benchmark across sectors, across deals, across countries? And in the role that we play, and that's what brings me to what do we want to be able to do with this data, right? And I think what all of us want is creating the evidence as we speak to the government, as we speak to the different partners. What is the evidence that we are able to generate? Are we able to generate evidence on procurement? Are we able to, as Chloe just said, talking to commissioners, we work in middle income countries where there is now a lot of appetite to use such instruments, but they keep asking us on evidence on, has this worked? What are the costs? What's the pricing of the risk? So being able to generate that data in a meaningful way to be able to bring to these transactions is what's critical to us. And I think the other piece that that this data does is really help bring more meaning to the transactions themselves. When we see results on these transactions, what does that really mean? How does that compare? Inga spoke about attribution. And that's so critical in DIBS. I think a lot of organizations, our partners, bookings, FRS, everyone's working on figuring out the attribution of the DIB effect. But I think having more and more data as we do more transactions and being able to compare that in a meaningful way, having a common currency, I think that'll be super, super critical. And that's my wish list. In 5 years, will we have the common platform and the common currency to be able to record back data, and there's one database where we are all able to use and pull all of this together. So I think that's really some top thoughts on this, and I think it flows with that. And thanks, Elle.
Yeah, Thanks, Krisha. That's a great wish list. Next up, we have Richard. Richard, as a Commissioner of Services, you face some difficult decisions. How might some of this data help you in your role?
Okay. Quick introduction. Clearly, I'm the Head of Strategic Procurement at Barton North East Somerset. I'm more a procurement person than a commissioner, but I spend a lot of my time working with my social care colleagues. I do a lot of innovative procurement, and I'm all for innovation. You've got to try things, and people have got to take risks if we're going to advance things. So my big ask is that people do try and take some risks. Some of the areas where I would like to use things like social impact bonds are often seen as too hard to do. I'd love to do things around social care, reablement, residential care. I think there are markets out there which are crying out for using this approach, but we need to educate our commissioners. Our commissioners are very risk averse. They like traditional block contracts, they like financial certainty. They don't necessarily like innovation, I'm afraid. So we've got to educate them. I've tried to do some very innovative stuff. Data has been the blockage. It really has. For example, if I can use a comparison, if I wanted to do things about educational and learning, youth services, there's actually a plethora of data and a plethora of good examples of where social impact bonds have worked very well in the UK. And I think we've seen both successes and failures from that point of view. And if Mark Rodden, who's my opposite number from North Somerset, had been here today, he could have told you about one of the successes. I can certainly tell you how difficult it is to look at some of these things in other areas. But again, I think people have got to keep on trying because, for example, my expertise is more around food procurement. And we've been very innovative in the past at Bath in using things like dynamic purchasing systems, which allow SMEs and other entrants into the market to actually get into the marketplace. And as a result of that, that's now being scaled up by Crown Commercial Services in terms of national frameworks. And if I start looking at the social outcomes that we can get from that, using that approach, in terms of fresh food getting into schools and hospitals, that's going to be tremendous. That will be a massive success. So clearly I'm working heavily with DEFRA from that point of view. I think there's another area which I think overlaps with what we're discussing here. I think that's the appetite for social value. And I think if you look within the UK, the approach to social value is beginning to take a big leap forward. And I would urge people to look at the social value portal and the Tom's approach to social value now, because I think that is becoming the normality, because in effect, we finally got an approach which measures social value impact. It's not perfect, but again, I think it can be mirrored in terms of how we work in terms of social impact bonds and outputs based commissioning. So, but again, the difficulty we still have then is still educating both the commissioners and the suppliers. Suppliers still do not understand social value. I was one of the first people to have a very large legal challenge on a procurement around social value, which I won because clearly the challenging organisation didn't understand social value, and I felt a bit sorry for them from that point of view. But it's very clear in my mind what social value is. It's over and above what a contract would traditionally deliver. So I think there's some real ways forward, but data is an absolute nightmare at times for supporting some of the things that we want to deliver. We constantly go back to Red Book data from government, which is often very out of date and doesn't really reflect the reality of what we're trying to deliver. So I think we've got to spend an awful lot of time on this. I think with some of the open data workshops that are going on, we have quite a big hack community within Bath who love my data at times, if I can get it to them in a good format. And they've done some fantastic things with it. So yes, I think open data transparency is really, really important. And there's some fantastic things we can do, but we've got to be ambitious.
Great, thank you, Richard. Thank you for encouraging us to be ambitious. I think it's important that we remember that there is a spirit of innovation around a lot of this, and I think we'll certainly be keen to tap into your hack community in some of our future work as well. Next up would be Tom. Tom, could you guide us through your thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. And yeah, just want to echo that I think focusing around user stories is again a really good idea, ensuring that it will sort of fulfill the needs and wants of people ultimately, rather than just being a sort of an interesting trove of data. So very quickly then, I suppose, social finance is an intermediary. We work with, well, in fact, I'll just, from my perspective, work with sort of local government, central government providers, to an extent investors, shaping individual social impact bond projects, or new sort of policy approaches and programs. So the thing that I'd really like to see is how previous projects have defined outcomes at the sort of broad level, all the way down to how those things have been translated into contracts between a commissioner and a service provider. And then even one step further again, how that service provider or how that agency, whoever they are, how that NGO has gone about collecting those things in practice, you know, data, definitions, dictionaries, actual systems, all that sort of nitty gritty stuff. And the sort of thing I want to be doing with that is essentially project to project learning and improvements, so that if there have been a bunch of projects within homelessness and I'm working with a group of people who want to do another project about homelessness, I know how it's been defined previously. I know what the good ways of doing it are, or the sort of next way that we should do it in our project, learning from the pitfalls and mistakes of previous projects. So it's that really sort of project to project learning, whether that's at an individual level or whether that's, you know, advising central government how they're going to commission a whole new batch of projects around homelessness, for instance. And I think one other sort of thing to just throw in, as well as that sort of the definitions of outcomes, is potentially something around the contact details of the people from projects and some more qualitative information, some of the sort of pros and cons that they experience of doing things in different ways. Because I think there's so much you can take from, you know, quantitative data and so much sort of assumptions you can draw. But actually, if you see that this project over here did it this way and this one did it another way, you need to just speak to those two people to find out what the benefits or sort of drawbacks of it are. And I don't know whether that's something, you know, it would be down to me as a user to do, or whether actually that's something that the Go Lab can be sort of trying to glean and go at that more sort of qualitative learnings once you've got a range of different examples in this database. So yeah, that's all for me. But great initiative. Really excited to see what it becomes.
That's great. Thanks, Tom. We're keen to capture all of your user stories, both from the chat and from this discussion. So that qualitative point will absolutely add to the pile of things that we need to consider. Next up, we have Radana. Could you talk us through your use case and thinking on this, please?
Fantastic. Thanks very much. So as a kind of government or donor commissioner, and I'm sure you will all understand what I mean by commissioner, it's sort of person working in a government-linked donor organization, trying to structure and eventually fund projects in critical areas that help us deliver the Sustainable Development Goals. I guess very high-level objectives would be in helping us allocate our donor resources across our own portfolio to make sure that we're achieving impact, right, and that we're making a real difference, and can look at, well, with our budgets and with our spend, are we generating an impact for end users, and if so, are we doing that well, efficiently, effectively? Are we delivering value for money? So that's for ourselves as an institution, and that's where I think data has a big role to play. But I think, secondly, it can also help us be a trusted advisor and partner in advising other governments, specifically for DFID, it's governments in lower and middle income countries, in how to commission their own public services as well. So I think there's a dual role there for us in our own programs, but also in advising and influencing as well. In terms of what's useful or what type of data we want, I guess on the one hand, it's data on transaction details and really the sort of, you know, backward looking or possibly in future even live data from transactions, to really understand, well, you know, what's out there, what are we learning from others, help assess the shape of the market, essentially. What does good look like, both in terms of the impact being achieved and in terms of pricing and outcome areas? I'm seeing a lot of that appear also in the chat box as well. I think it's particularly important for us to understand the user groups that are being engaged through outcomes-based programs. You know, as a government commissioner, I guess one of the biggest challenges always is in paying for outcomes, so paying for services, but not really receiving the services themselves. So not having that direct experience, right? So making sure that we know who users are and what sort of impact that they're experiencing is brilliant. I guess lastly, the big question that again Krisha I think has already addressed is the why. Well, what's driving this, and how can we learn? How can we continue to iterate and improve on existing transactions to make them better in future, and to help essentially hopefully continue some of the work that we've been doing in coordinating the global community of both funders and donors and governments as well. In terms of just a very last line on some of the characteristics of data that will be really important, I think that actually is very, very similar to work that we're doing around impact investing and around data standards and reporting standards in reporting the impacts of investments. So, you know, comparability, a very big feature, robustness, to make sure that we can report with confidence and actually stand behind the results that are being reported. And finally, the ability to break down, I was going to say manipulate data, but that sounds really wrong. So I hope you know what I mean. It's break down by various characteristics and layers to be able to look at, you know, really understand kind of individual small group outcomes as well as the bigger picture too.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rodana. I think that's a really exciting picture in terms of these elements of learning and comparability. So thank you for painting that picture for us. I've just looked at the time. I am clearly completely over optimistic on how these things work. I'm afraid that we don't really have time for questions for our panelists here, but please do keep putting your ideas into the chat box. That's going to be a real great resource for us in future to guide our thinking. I expect that we'll take 15 minutes to work through our next set of discussants, which means that our announcements and updates are likely to fall slightly past the allotted finish time for this session. So if you're able to stay on the line beyond the next 15 minutes, that would be great. If not, we'll take care to circulate the announcements and updates by email after the session. But I'm really excited to introduce our next set of discussants. These are people whose work involves open data or collaborative data endeavours. And we've asked them to pick up on any opportunities that they see to join up Do their data users and use cases align with any of ours? Who are their users? What kind of things do they work on? And also possibly any tips or suggestions as we begin to embark on this endeavour. So I'm really pleased to welcome Oscar Hernandez from Open Contracting Partnership as our first experienced hand in this space. So over to you, Oscar.
Thanks, Claire. So I do have some slides, but I promise I will be quick. So I'm a senior program manager with the Open Contracting Partnership, and I'm leading our implementation work in Latin America. But before I joined OCP, I was also a fellow with the Harvard Government Performance Lab, working implementing results-driven contracting strategies with cities across the US. And I mentioned that because I think my experience is informed both by working directly in improving procurement processes with outcomes-based strategies, and also very much inspired by social impact bonds, and also working with partners in Latin America and also in the US, implementing data standards for procurement systems. So what we do at OCP is that we work with governments and their stakeholders to implement data-driven reform projects that improve the effectiveness and fairness of government contracting. And we believe, and we have seen how this approach has the potential to significantly improve service delivery. So, since I only have 5 minutes, I want to jump directly to what we mean by open contracting and how we think about the impact of open contracting reform. So what success looks like for open contracting reforms. And at a high level, I think open contracting advances the principles of open government and open data. So that actually means having timely, high quality open data, but also giving businesses and civil society a voice that government listens to. So it's both publishing and using data that enables feedback loops that can transform procurement system, but all that, which in turn also enables to move beyond the compliance culture that is so common in government contracting to focus on outcomes and contract results. And what we have seen over the last 6 years working on this approach is that we have really seen how key it is to have a strong multi-stakeholder collaboration where you empower your community with tools to provide the right kind of feedback. So on the one hand, being open about procurement systems really enables vendors and the marketplace to innovate and iterate and provide better services. And on the other hand, having an empowered civil society can actually mean that you have more effective contract monitoring that curbs corruption and improves service delivery. So if I had to summarize in one sentence what success looked like in open contracting reforms, it's really about creating multi-stakeholder coalitions that are centered around data, outcomes, and collaboration. So one of the core products that we use to advance data-driven reforms and collaboration is the Open Contracting Data Standard, or OCDS. I'm obviously talking about this knowing that Tim Davis is on the line and he worked on this from the beginning, but nevertheless, I'll speak about the principles. So the standard really provides guidance on both what to publish and how to publish it. And since its inception, the standard was built around the supply of data available for procurement processes across the globe. And in that sense, OCDS was really about describing the entire procurement process, not just tenders or contracts, but the whole processes from planning through the delivery and payment. And as you know, an individual contracting process has different stages. And what we do is that we bring together that data with a single contracting process identifier, which is the OCID. And that means that users can easily access join up data across the entire contracting process. And that allows to understand what's working well and what's not working well in each stage of the procurement cycle. So for example, having timely publication of budget and project plans in the procurement stage enables better strategic planning and user research, while publishing contract implementation data, including data on payments and milestones, enables to have better contract management processes and enables systems re-engineering. So just to share contracting data in an effective manner with stakeholders, the OCDS was also built around 4 use cases, which we have seen come to fruition in many of our projects. So we have worked with partners to use open contracting data to improve value for money and efficiency, detect fraud, corruption, and improve integrity, improve contract implementation and service delivery, and improve competition and level the playing field for businesses. And I want to give you one example of how that looks like in real life. So the Bogota School Meals Program is a huge program in Colombia, the largest one, had multiple problems before it was reformed. It had too little competition. The most important players of the food sector were really not participating in this process, but only some really random vendors were the only ones like were providing the food here. And the food quality was really bad and with a lot of delivery problems or logistical problems rather. So what the government of Bogota did is that they teamed up with the National Procurement Agency to open up and analyze their data. And they reached out to the market with the insights that they had and quickly understood that they needed to redesign the entire procurement process with a new service delivery model, which split up transportation on the one hand from food production. So that immediately increased participation in the process, allowing to go from 14 to 46 suppliers. But it also helped uncover other problems, such as a price fixing scheme who was fixing the price of fruits. And that's kind of like what you see here that was reported by different media outlets, and actually also enabled to redesign the kind of food that children were receiving. And another interesting example of how OCDS can really improve government performance just beyond context is that it enables to link up multiple systems and publishers' data. So the most common example that we see is harmonized publication by both the Ministry of Finance and the Procurement Agency. And in Paraguay, which is the example that I have here, this has enabled linking data about investment projects, budgets, contracts, and have a complete picture of what's going on with public investment projects. So in this slide, what I've seen is that I've taken a screenshot of Mapa Inversiones, or in the investment map by the Inter-American Development Bank, an initiative that is powered by OCDS and allows you to see all the budget and contracts associated with a single project and how much of it has been implemented. So just to sum up very quickly, these are kind of like the common stages that we see from reforms that get to real impact and systemic change. So, you know, these are kind of like steps that are groundwork and where the technical work happens. But what I want to say really is that, you know, publication and OCDS publication isn't kind of like a fire and forget sort of initiative. And you shouldn't really aim for perfection from the beginning, but just this idea of actually having at the outset some sort of data publication and being open to improve that data quality and iterating from getting feedback from users really drive important reforms. So really implementation is not a linear process, but a feedback loop where engagement with users and fits into improvements of the data that is being published and the procurement systems that we're trying to reform. Okay, that was my intervention.
Great, thanks, Oscar. And if you're able to share the slides, that would be great. We'll circulate those. Next up, it would be great to hear from Claudia and your initiative.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so really nice to be a part of this group. As I said, lots of familiar faces, which is always great. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of a program which is called the Impact Alliance. We are a spin out of Deutsche Bank, where I was an entrepreneur and now become an entrepreneur. We are a sister initiative to the Impact Management Project, which I hope a couple of you might be familiar with. And the reason for that is that when we initially started the venture, the market pointed us for all the right reasons to the Impact Management Project as a forum that is currently working on how to create consensus about how impacts should be consistently measured, managed, and reported. So we thought we really didn't want to reinvent the wheel or duplicate or add to the noise what is already a very busy kind of space. And we looked at their work, especially around impact classes. And the platform which we launched yesterday, the impact classification system, focuses on two key user groups and kind of thereby two different investment needs we are seeing, or investment community needs. One are the asset owners, so portfolio managers, advisors, consultants that are currently trying to look across multi-asset class portfolios and get an understanding on the basis of the existing data and measurement approaches, how some of those compare, and really if there's a way that strengthens their ability to manage those portfolios more purposefully. And then the other user group are the asset and fund managers, who are burdened with a myriad of kind of reporting demands from their LPs, and thereby saying, you know, until somebody comes up, and I like what Ruben said, you know, with the glorious standards, so the equivalent of an IFRS accounting standard, you know, what is it actually that we should be doing, and how should we be doing it? So those, with those two kind of needs in mind, and knowing that, you know, coming to that holy grail of standards that are, you know, agreed and hopefully backed by some sort of government and regulation, and how long that is potentially down the line, we said, okay, we really want to meet the market where it is today, and allow, on the basis of everything that an asset manager or fund manager has available today, for them to assess, but importantly describe and communicate the ESG risks and impacts of their funds. And we have therefore developed an online tool, and I've seen popping up, if I could share a link to the platform. So you're in luck. I can share, actually everything is on our website, so I can put it in the chat afterwards. But if you go on LinkedIn, we've been fortunate enough that there are quite a few articles that came out after the launch event. But the idea is that the process allows asset managers or fund managers, on the basis of the data sets and measurement approaches they're using today, to start self-reporting how they assess, measure, and manage their impacts. And because we're using the impact classes as kind of a categorization, it means that the data sets thereby become comparable. So if you look at funds across different asset classes and sectors, you all of a sudden get that initial degree of comparability, and actually can then drill deeper into outcomes data if need be at the asset level, if an asset manager said they would have that information available. So on the flip side, we have also created a publicly available directory, and we have over 28 funds classified already. It's not a large number because, as I said, we only launched yesterday, and that is the number of funds that have classified from our tester cohort. Again, I can share some more information. And ultimately what we're trying to achieve is, and that, I think that's the important difference to some of the other platforms that are out there. We don't want to map the universe of impact investments out there. We really want to get a better understanding of the impact of all investments. So as long as you manage and your ESG risks and your impacts to a certain degree, the impact classes allow you to kind of map your investments against what is called the impact class metrics. And I think thereby classification information or data is very different to other data, because what we are doing, we're really showcasing and highlighting best practices that are out there, and some of the other data initiatives, they are featured on the platform. So if you think of a IRIS Plus, if you think of a B-Lab assessment, if you think of some of the kind of bigger data providers, they are all listed. So the idea is that we really want to showcase the breadth of information is out there, to then also foster the right conversations among practitioners as to what good might look like. And I pause it there because I know Elle is keen to have others speak as well. And I put everything in the chat, and you can then just look it up there.
Yeah, fab. Thank you so much, Claudia. I think it really sounds like there's a great complementarity between your work and the areas of interest for this group. So it's great to hear from you. Thanks for joining us. Apologies again for my chronically poor timekeeping. If you're able to stay with us for the next 15 minutes, that would be great. Equally, we understand if you only budgeted the time on the invite. But next up, if Corey is still able to join us, it would be great to hear from your perspective how we can begin to bring a community together around some of this.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, everyone. It's been great to hear from all of you so far. I'm going to be brief, and I'm going to actually just offer some questions and thoughts, because I think I'm sort of closing us down here. So I'm at Georgetown University, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm with the Beck Center for Social Impact and Innovation. Unlike most academic centers, we actually bring in practitioners to lead research projects, and many of our projects have a data intersection. We're working on data sharing guidance. We have projects around data and criminal justice and race, the data that I called for earlier on in the chat, it was really sort of speaking to that. We've got some practitioner fellows working on outcomes-based contracts with US states. So all kinds of different things where data plays an important role. And as we think about our work, and as Indigo thinks about its work, some things that come to mind would be, and I think you all are really approaching the work in this way, which I commend, anything you're thinking about working on, someone has almost certainly solved that problem or answered that question. And it's so smart to be thinking about how do you go and walk the halls and scout the world and find those people and build on what they're already doing. Surface the existing solutions and build upon that. Lift up the people already doing the work. And I think that's such a great approach. Some questions I have around that are really thinking through, how do you know you're finding everyone? How do you know you're finding the right people and bringing them in? And how are you making your own work discoverable to ensure that others will come across and find you and feel open and empowered to collaborate with you? And I think it's so smart to just be thinking throughout this whole ecosystem and kind of the life cycle of the work you're doing. How do we just continue this ongoing feedback loop to keep sharing information and learning from one another? A couple of other questions I had, and maybe I'll leave it at this, is I noted that particularly early on, building the community is such an important part of this work. And I'm curious how end users get involved. And so we gave a number of examples about people experiencing homelessness today. And how do those individuals actually factor in to these data-driven projects and data-driven policies that we're eager to work on? How are we actually pulling in the true end users, not only the policymakers around homelessness, who are end users in their own right and very important, we need to have them, but also the actual individuals on the ground. And so thinking about how we go and find those end users and work with them, meet them where they are, and truly make our work user-centered and human-centered in the way we carry it out feels really important and a thing to consider. And then finally, what I see happening here, although I don't think I heard it mentioned today, is really about building trust with those end users, building trust back in our societies. We are experiencing, certainly in the United States, and I think in many of your countries as well, record low levels of trust in government. How can we use these data-driven approaches and these user-centered methodologies to build back our trust in government by showing what works and helping our communities understand that we're building off of proven, trusted solutions that others before us have found success in. So I'm really excited to see where all of this goes. The Beck Center at Georgetown is delighted to be part of it, and it was wonderful to be here with you all today. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks for those provocations, Corey. It's really helpful to get those thoughts, particularly around trust and thinking about the true end users for services. I was also really heartened by what you said, which made me think that it's not cheating to borrow other people's ideas and relating that back to something that Ruben said about standing on the shoulders of other projects. So I think that's something helpful to bear in mind. Now, I'm really grateful to Silvana, who has really kindly offered to move her contribution until our next session in September in the interests of helping me keep a bit more to time. So thank you, Silvana, and we'll be really pleased to hear from you next time. So next we just have a few thoughts from Tim Davies. So over to you, Tim.
Yes, thank you. And it's just delightful to see so many people joining this conversation. I'll try and be really, really brief. I've spent the last decade working on many different data standards projects, from aid transparency, open contracting, 360 giving on grants. And in all of those, what's come out is people often see them as technology projects or technical detailed things. But as Corey has just emphasized, this is about people. These are tools of mass collaboration. Standards are ways of taking the effort that we're all working on individually and trying to find those points of connection and collaboration. But that gives them a really big problem. They're often like public goods. If we do this in open and collaborative ways, they're non-excludable. There's real risk of free riders. Who puts in the effort? Now, the great thing about talking about that with a group of people who focus on social impact investment is you are experts at working out how do we finance public goods? How do we get people to invest and work together on building public goods? Many of those other standards projects I've worked on in the past still struggle with how do we invest in the public good piece. But I think here there is a community who both have the domain expertise, the desire to share and collaborate, and that to bring into the party. And I think the last thing just to pick up on, as Corey was highlighting, is if this is to work, and I think what you might have heard from Silvana if she'd spoken and you'll hear in September, is standards need to be inclusive. They need to really, really think about power, about who's having to do the hard work of allowing us to collaborate and bring our data together, whose needs are we serving, and making sure we're always thinking about that, always thinking about being as inclusive as we can possibly be in the people around the table, designing standardization, that there aren't first mover advantages that takes in the direction that doesn't work for everyone, but we have that conversation so we think about the problems we're solving and really address them well. So it's really great to see a community here starting to emerge that can take some of this work forward. So thanks to GoLab for convening.
Fab. Thank you so much, Tim. For our final section, we have a few announcements to make. So let me just share a slide or two on this. So first up, my colleague Juliana has been busily writing up and building on user stories. So this will be something that we continue to compile. I don't think we've got time to give you a guided tour now, but perhaps another thing that we'll push until our September get together. And then next up, I think Rory would like to give an overview of our Hack and Learn, which is our next big thing.
Okay, I'm going to be very brief. Our request of all of you, or call to action, is that you sign up for our Hack and Learn, a hackathon style series of events. The first is going to be in August, and it's focused on sort of coder and policymaker dialogue. The second will be in September. It's a coder show and tell at our conference. And the third will be our next sort of peer learning session that's really about reflection. The registration is now open on our website. Please do register. Please share it with other policymakers and coders. We're open to having both policymakers and coders, and people who are neither policymakers nor coders. Novices are welcome. So please do that. Please share widely. And thanks to Corey and the Beak Center for helping us co-host that. Another thing I want to tell you is that the INDIGO system and our data visual work is under development. Open Data Services are working on that, and we're going to be posting materials to GitHub for use in the Hack and Learn. So you'll see some of that. We're posting it on GitHub, which is a tool for developers, but also that allows sort of people to give us feedback. So we want to build those feedback loops that people have talked about. Part of that will include publishing expanded definitions around our impact bonds and making it easier to sort of hook and link on to some of the other data sets and open data initiatives that you've heard about. That's coming soon. And another thing that is coming and we're very excited about is work that we're doing with Big Issue Invest. We're doing a sort of learning and technical project around understanding the role of a social investor beyond just the money. And so hopefully that will be helpful. It's a prototype project, and we're looking forward to other social investors sort of giving us their feedback on that in the September conference. So please do sign up for the Hack and Learn. Not the Hack and Learn, in the conference. If you sign up for the Hack and Learn, you will also be signed up for the conference. So please do that. Thank you.
Brill. Thanks, Rory. Just to prompt that the sign up web link is in the chat. Thanks, Juliana, for posting that. So clearly there's a lot going on and a lot to think about. So I think it would be great if we kind of keep convened, keep connected. So on this final slide, we just have our webpage. Please visit that. That's where we'll keep updating the latest activities and information. We also have a mail list. I think many of you are already on this mail list, but if you would like to join, please do. You can get in touch with any further suggestions, thoughts, recommendations using our email address, which is also on this slide. And we'd love to keep this conversation going at all of those events that Rory mentioned. Apologies again for my chronically poor timekeeping, but thank you all for your energy, enthusiasm and openness as we embark on this crusade together. So thank you very much. Good day, everyone. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks
Bye.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.